All right, so let's get into this question you have about whether moving up a level is always the best thing for an athlete.
Yeah.
We've got some interesting sources here.
Yeah, we do.
Some coaching guides, some academy applications, and even a book about how technology is affecting kids' development in sports.
It is really interesting to me how we often assume that surrounding an athlete with better players is automatically going to make them better.
Right,
But is that always true?
right.
And I think these sources challenge that assumption a little bit.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, so one that I thought was really interesting was this application for the Canadian Elite Academy.
Um, mm,
And they ask about an athlete's commitment to volleyball.
right.
And it's not just about skills.
No.
It's about how they balance training with school,
Yeah.
their work ethic,
Mhm.
even past awards.
That's a really important point because they're not just looking for raw talent.
Right.
They're looking for dedication
Yeah.
and a willingness to really prioritize volleyball.
Right.
I mean, to even be considered for their advanced hitting sessions, athletes need at least 2 years of experience and 10 prior academy sessions.
Wow.
That's a huge commitment.
It's a lot, yeah. And it makes you think about what kind of message that sends.
Yeah.
Are they saying that consistent, structured training is ultimately more important than natural talent?
It's a really interesting question, and it leads us to another thought-provoking source. Dr. Cannell's book, Coaching Sports to Internet Brats.
Okay.
And he argues that kids today are growing up in a world of instant gratification.
Right.
Video games, social media, everything is designed to give them these quick rewards and constant feedback.
Right. And how does that relate to sports? Because that seems like the exact opposite
Okay,
to
see-
how athletics work.
Sports are all about delayed gratification.
Yeah.
You put in hours of practice, sweat, sometimes tears before you see any significant improvement.
Right.
So Dr. Cannell suggests that this clash of cultures might be why some kids really struggle to adapt to the demands of a sport.
So if we're connecting that back to the Canadian Elite Academy application, it seems like they're very aware of this potential disconnect. They're filtering for athletes who are ready to embrace that long-term delayed gratification mindset.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, look, we're not just going to throw you in the deep end and hope for the best.
Yeah.
We want to see that you're in this for the long haul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of the deep end, Dr. Cannell is not afraid to push athletes hard.
Yeah.
He talks about pushing his own kid toward elite academies and how he doesn't believe in everyone gets a ribbon.
Yeah.
He even advocates for a dictatorship style of coaching during practice to maximize time and focus.
Now, that is a controversial approach.
It is.
And it really makes you wonder, is that intensity beneficial or harmful?
Right.
Could it backfire and make an athlete actually resent the sport?
Yeah, I think there's a fine line there.
Yeah.
Too much pressure could be detrimental, but maybe a little bit of tough love is what some athletes need.
Right. It really depends on the individual athlete and their personality.
Yeah.
Some might thrive under that kind of intensity.
Yeah.
And others might completely crumble.
Right.
So I think the key is for the coaches to be able to read their athletes and kind of adapt their approach
Right.
accordingly.
For sure. And that leads perfectly into the next part of our deep dive,
Okay.
where we'll explore the pros and cons of actually playing with better athletes.
Right.
Does it accelerate development, or could it actually hold an athlete back?
Really interesting questions. We'll unpack all that and more in our next deep dive. So stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll be back. Welcome back to our deep dive on moving athletes up a level.
Yeah.
In part one, we talked about those high expectations of elite programs and how tech culture is influencing athletes' mindsets.
Right.
So now let's tackle this question you have.
Okay.
Does playing with better athletes actually help someone reach their full potential?
Yeah.
One of the sources that you shared, the Comprehensive Guide to Coaching, talks about the benefits of exposure to a higher level of play.
Right. And I think that just being around more skilled strategic players can push an athlete to elevate their own game.
Yeah.
And it's not just about mimicking what they see.
Right.
It's also about understanding the why behind those advanced techniques.
It reminds me of that idea that iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
But what if the iron isn't quite ready yet?
Right.
Could playing up actually damage an athlete's confidence
Yeah.
if they're constantly being outmatched?
That's a really important point, and I think it's where the coach's role becomes absolutely crucial.
Right.
You know, we talk about Dr. Cannell's dictatorship in practice.
Right.
That might be effective for, pure skill work.
Right.
But in a game situation, it's got to be way more nuanced than that.
So how does a coach balance that need for intensity
Yeah.
with making sure an athlete who's playing up isn't getting crushed emotionally.
I think individualized training plans are key even within a team setting.
Okay.
The volleyball coaching and player development guide that you sent emphasizes this. Even when an athlete is playing up, they still need to be working on their specific areas of weakness, not just trying to keep up with the general pace of the team.
Right. That makes sense. But let's not forget about the athlete's own mindset.
Right.
Dr. Cannell was very adamant that elite athletes need a certain drive, a focus that goes beyond just practice time.
Yeah.
So does that mean that some athletes are just not cut out for moving up,
Right.
even if they have the skills?
Yeah. It's not about being cut out for it.
Okay.
It's more about recognizing what motivates that individual athlete.
Right.
If an athlete is constantly comparing themselves to those better players
Yeah.
and getting discouraged,
Right.
moving up might not be beneficial. But if
Yeah.
they see it as a learning opportunity, a chance to really push their own boundaries,
Yeah.
then it could be incredibly powerful.
So it sounds like communication is key here
Absolutely.
between the athlete, the coach, maybe even the parents.
Right.
Everyone needs to be on the same page about the goals
Right.
and expectations of playing up.
And I think that's where Dr. Cannell's very strict separation of coaches, coach, parents, parent really comes in.
Yes.
Imagine a parent trying to undermine the coach's decision to move a player up.
Right.
That just creates chaos for the athlete.
Or a parent pushing for their child to play up when the coach doesn't think they're ready.
Right, exactly.
That puts the athlete in a really tough spot.
Exactly. Open and honest communication is vital for everyone involved.
Yeah.
But even with the right support system, the athlete still needs that internal drive
Right.
that Dr. Cannell was talking about, this reaching the next level idea.
Right.
It can't just be about external validation.
Right. It's about that personal growth, that desire to constantly challenge oneself,
Yeah,
regardless of the competition.
exactly.
But is that something that you could teach, or is it just something an athlete either has or doesn't have?
That's a great question, and it's actually something that we'll explore in a lot more depth in our next episode, where we'll look at some really practical strategies for helping athletes reach their full potential no matter what level they're playing at.
Love it. All right, so stay tuned. We'll be back for part 3. All right, welcome back to our deep dive on moving athletes up a level.
Yep.
We've talked about those high standards of elite programs, the impact of tech, and the pros and cons of playing with better players.
Right.
So for this final part, let's kind of shift gears a bit.
Okay.
Instead of just focusing on the should you or shouldn't you of moving up, let's look at some practical strategies for helping athletes reach their potential,
Sure.
no matter what level they're at.
I like that.
Because even if an athlete isn't ready to move up, or maybe they choose not to, there are still things that they can do to maximize their development.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most important things, and this came up in a lot of the sources that you sent, is the need to develop the whole athlete,
Right.
not just their physical skills.
Right. We touched on this earlier with Dr. Cannell's emphasis on mental toughness and focus.
Yeah.
But what does that look like, practically speaking?
Well, I mean, think about those elite academy applications we talked about.
Yeah.
They're not just looking at stats and skills.
Right.
They're assessing work ethic, time management,
Yeah.
even how an athlete balances volleyball with other commitments.
Right.
Those are all aspects of the whole athlete.
So it's about instilling those good habits.
Yeah.
Teaching them how to set goals,
Yeah.
manage their time, deal with setbacks. It's almost like life coaching,
It is.
as much as it is sports coaching.
Exactly. And there are specific techniques that coaches can use that can really help with that.
Okay.
The volleyball coaching and player development guide you sent talks about visualization,
Right.
positive self-talk, even mindfulness practices.
Yeah.
These tools can really help athletes manage stress, build confidence, and just stay focused under pressure.
That makes me think about that internet brat concept.
Yeah.
If kids are used to that instant gratification and that constant feedback, maybe these mental techniques can help bridge that gap and help them adapt to the more delayed gratification nature of sports.
Absolutely. It highlights how important it is for coaches to be aware of these broader cultural influences and adapt their approach accordingly.
Right. Okay, so we've got the mental game covered, but we can't ignore the physical side, right?
Right.
Proper training, nutrition, recovery.
Of course, you sent a great source on this, the Comprehensive Guide to Coaching Elementary and High School Age Athletes.
Oh, yeah.
It was packed with information about healthy eating habits, hydration, sleep,
Oh, wow.
even the importance of active rest versus complete downtime.
And I think that's a key point there is individualization.
Yes.
What works for one athlete might not work for another.
Exactly.
Some might need more carbs, others might need more protein.
Right.
Some might recover faster with a light jog, others might need a full day off.
Absolutely. It's about understanding each athlete's unique needs and tailoring your approach accordingly.
And that goes for training plans too.
Yeah.
Even if an athlete is playing up, they still need to be working on their specific weaknesses.
Exactly.
Not just trying to keep up with the general pace of the team.
Right. And it makes me think back to that dictatorship versus individualized coaching styles that we were talking about before.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a time and a place for both.
Right.
Maybe the dictatorship is really effective for drilling those very specific skills.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to nutrition recovery, personalized training plans,
Right.
that's when a more nuanced approach is necessary.
It's about finding that balance
Yes.
between pushing athletes to reach their potential and respecting their individual needs
Exactly.
and limitations. And speaking of balance, we can't forget about communication.
Right.
We talked about it in the context of coaches and parents, but what about communication between teammates?
Oh, that's so crucial.
Yeah.
Encouraging athletes to support each other, provide constructive feedback, celebrate each other's successes.
Yeah.
That creates a really positive and growth-oriented environment.
And it makes me think about that quote from Dr. Cannell.
Oh, yeah.
He said, "Don't aspire to be the best on the team. Aspire to be the best for the team."
So good.
And it shifts the focus away from individual achievement
Right.
to collective success.
Exactly.
And I think that's a great note to end on,
Yeah.
whether an athlete is moving up a level or not,
Right.
whether they're naturally gifted or have to work harder.
Yeah.
It's about fostering that love of the game, that sense of teamwork, and that constant desire to improve.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights to apply to your coaching journey.
Yeah.
Remember, success isn't always about winning the game. It's about helping your athletes become the best versions of themselves, both on and off the court.
Absolutely.
Until next time.